Okay, hello and welcome back to our last session of the day, our professional panel. We're going to hear from a professional service executive that has leveraged a digital mindset to prioritize employee well being, customer stability, and financial viability. Welcome to the show today, Brian Stillwell. Brian is the Vice President of Sales Enablement at NWN Carousel, looking after SFDC enablement education and facilitation of the force management methodology. Brian has held leadership roles in sales enablement, product management, go to market, business development, and sales. His current role facilitates the learning, discipline, and skills to enable sellers to be more effective. Thank you so much for being here, Brian.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to take a second to say that really have enjoyed the session and listening in. I've learned a few things that I wasn't aware of around Salesforce, so really do appreciate that. It's been very, very informative. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I have too. It's really cool to see the thought leadership of what's going on in the world, um, compared to what technology can do to help with all these things. So it has truly been an excellent day. So appreciate you saying that. So today we've talked about the importance of a digital sales playbook and leading with a digital first approach. So if you look at an organization that has prioritized digital transformation, I would put NWN in that category, of course. You're really doing great things. So what are your thoughts on how the digital movement impacts high performing organizations? And can you tell us, this is a second part, can you tell us what moved your organization to move into that direction? And then I have another question, but I'll wait.
Okay, no worries. No worries. I'll do my best to answer them in the
Yeah.
order in which you gave me. So high performing organizations are always looking to transform as they move through year to year in their business. The pandemic changed this whole notion of leveraging digital and digital transformation. A lot of companies had it on their roadmap over the next 2, 4, 6 years to accomplish this level of digital transformation. Many of them started down the path pre-pandemic, but the pandemic itself accelerated it for those high-performing organizations. It changed how we communicate, right? Everyone went to Zoom, WebEx, and the video first approach, which in my opinion is a digital first approach. It's not in person, but it's the closest thing we have from a digital perspective. Communications in general went, including things like email and the ability to accelerate that level of communication. Slack and other tools like it have all come really to the forefront since 2019. So if they're embracing the technologies, and we saw this in our industry in solution providers, solution integration companies, where the ones that really did well during the pandemic were the ones that were already on a path for digital and operating in the digital world first, and changing the way they go to market and changing the way they interact with their clients. In our case, we came through 2019 and the year 2020 for us was the best in our 30-year history from a revenue and from a gross margin perspective. So if you pivot at the right point in time and leverage those digital capabilities, those high performing organizations did very, very well.
And is there, oh, sorry.
No, your second half of your question was about what put us on that path, right?
Yeah.
So if you'll indulge me just for a moment for a short story, as an organization, we grew up in the value-added reseller space. So remarketing other people's equipment, layering on some services, some value, and selling that to customers. In 2019, we changed all the rules. We brought in a new executive leadership team. We went from being a value-added reseller to really a solutions innovator. And in doing that transition, we were already on a path that was different than most organizations. We were implementing all new tool sets. We were upgrading existing tool sets. We went to Salesforce and CPQ. We really started to change our go-to-market strategy from a cost-plus resale environment to a fully packaged set of offers that started with what we call EMP. So it's an experience management platform, but really is an aggregate point for our customers to be able to see and interact with and manage not only their environment, but their interaction with us. So very similar to the Salesforce Experience Cloud. We were on that path and developing that starting in 19. So we already kind of started down the path. When the pandemic hit for us, was a real challenge. We have a fairly significant portion of our business is state, local, and education. So state of California is a great example of an account that is probably one of the largest that we have, but in the several 100,000 people that work in the organizations we deal with, most of them were still leveraging technology that had to be in office. And pandemic hit, we had to move them all out of office. So their digital transformation, if you will, was highly accelerated. And for us, the offer structure and how we built out those capabilities, and the fact that we already could be remote, thanks to both Salesforce and ServiceNow, we're able to continue to function and serve our customers.
And is there a reason that you thought that was a really important strategy to have?
So it's interesting that strategy came with our new CEO, a gentleman named Jim Sullivan, who comes out of the software as a service marketplace. And he saw our organization and our capabilities very much like software as a service. If you think about how you provide services around technology, you can pre-package, you can build those services in a very consumable way for the customer. That does two things. One is it drives predictability in the outcome for the customer. It also drives predictability and scale for us as an organization, and allowed us to grow year over year since 2019 at an accelerated rate, both in revenue as well as in margin and EBITDA. So from that perspective, that's really how we wound up on the journey. And we honestly couldn't have gotten there without the platforms and the tool sets that we put in place that allow us to scale.
Mm-hmm. So, Brian, let's talk about some of the things that have, really moved the needle for NWN.
Sure.
Of course, as we talked about before, CPQ. So CPQ, or configure price quote, is an element you implemented into your Salesforce solution. How has this changed your sales process?
So in a tremendous way. Again, back in 19, we were not sophisticated from a platform perspective. We had probably 5 or 6 different tools that were being used to functionally do CPQ, one of which is this cool tool called, I think it's spelled like EXEL, and it's just pervasive through the organization. Again, we have public sector, we have enterprise customers, we have some SMB customers, all buying different sets of services in different ways. What CPQ gave us was the opportunity to create an environment where we can take our offers, we can build the bundles that exist within those offers, put in all of the ancillary components and or options that we want to be able to provide, and now give our both sales operations as well as sellers a clean, easy way to go in and configure an answer to a customer's outcome requirements. And it's been very, very powerful. We managed to migrate all of our contract work into CPQ and reduce the amount of time required to actually not only identify the components, but get them all the way through the process.
Sure. And how would you compare the speed and accuracy of your quotes before you implemented CPQ to after?
So we actually did a measure on that in 2020. We went from, as I mentioned, a cost plus environment to a list price less discount environment, and that took a lot of that was quite a forcing function for the folks that develop quoting. So initially we had some real challenges in getting that out of the gate. So it took us about 4.5 months to get folks to understand and adopt the new methodology. Once that happened, our adoption rate went from in the mid 30s to the mid to upper 80s. And our time to turn around quotes went from weeks in some cases to hours. So accelerated the ability to produce those quotes. It gave us still the flexibility to add other elements to it. And we're also able to produce our statements of work directly from the platform. So no more bouncing from application to application to get the work done. It was all in one house, press the button, here's your SAL, PDF it, send it to a customer. So
Sure.
much faster turnaround time.
Yeah. And this next question I'm going to ask you is probably we all know the answer just hearing from what you said so far about it. But, have you seen the impact on your pipeline since the implementation?
Yeah, so what we've seen in the pipeline, and everybody wants growth week over week, quarter over quarter,
Right.
and while that happens, what we set out to do is really drive quality and margin. So if you think about traditional value-added resellers, they add a few points to something, and they think that's a win, and they keep moving. Well, services, predominantly professional but also managed, provide a much different level of margin to the business. And our charter has been not only to grow from a revenue perspective, but from a margin and EBITDA perspective. And you don't get there selling hardware, frankly. So what's changed is the quality of our pipeline. Our average deal size went from 50, 60,000 up over $1 million. Our services rate went from a 1 in 5 attach to a 4 out of 5. So there's a lot of quality change in the pipeline. We also, during that time, implemented Medic as our qualification tool, and we rolled out Command of the Message, which is a sales and operational methodology that we leverage every day. So the quality of the pipeline has increased. The volume has as well, but we have more multi-million-dollar deals in the pipeline today than we had even last quarter.
Very cool. So next up, I want to talk a little bit more about the very hot and spicy topic. Get it? Hot and spicy.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good on you, Mike.
I'm always looking out for a pun. Don't worry. Customer 360, of course, it's hot and spicy because it's all about the customer right now and the customer experience. So how are you using Salesforce Customer 360 to gain a competitive advantage?
So really, if you want to think of it, our service to the customer comes in multiple forms, right? I look after the front end of that relationship. Our customer success and the work that customer success does has been incredible when it comes to sharing and supporting customers. A big part of it is that aggregate point in EMP that we talked about, and our ability to be very, very transparent with the customer. So from that perspective, it's been a tremendous experience, a lot of growth. We implemented NPS in 2020, and I'm happy to say our NPS score continues to grow. It's not where we want it yet, but it's bloody close.
And having a single shared view of your customer can obviously impact the way that you serve them. Have you heard any feedback from your customers on their experience?
Yeah. So the tool that I refer to as EMP, which is very similar to, and we will likely leverage the components from Salesforce in the same way, it has been really a breath of fresh air for our customers. They, in an integration model, especially where you have multiple people working in an environment, it's very, very difficult for the customer to manage the day-to-day and the things that occur in the background that they may not necessarily be technically astute at, but they, from a business perspective, want to be able to manage it. So really, it's been the opportunity for them to have that visibility and transparency has been significant, and we're getting nothing but positive feedback about that particular program.
And so my last question for you, NWN recently merged with Carousel.
Yep.
Congratulations, of course.
Thank you.
You're definitely in an exciting time right now. How do you foresee Salesforce being a tool to successfully integrate the two organizations?
That's a great question. So merging two organizations in Salesforce can be a little bit challenging. We're merging Salesforce, we're merging ERP, and we're merging ServiceNow as a company. So a lot of things in flight. I will say that thanks to the team at Sikich and the yeoman's work that they've done alongside of us and helping us get to sort of that converged instance. Salesforce for us is one of 3 platforms we operate the business on, and we will continue to invest in it and grow in it. We're very, very excited about that combined instance where we can leverage best practices from both companies and go back onto the trail of enhancements and continue to grow and add to Salesforce. We see it as an opportunity, whether it's through Experience Cloud or some of the other components. We see it as a way to drive to what we affectionately refer to as the easy button. We want to remove as much friction from the business as possible for sellers, solutions architects, and the sales operations team. And all 3 of those are our constituents around Salesforce. And all 3 of them, by the way, have very different requirements, but we're very, very excited that they're all on board. They're all providing us with the right objectives and information that we need in order to build really that better mousetrap, if you will.
Sure. Well, Brian, thank you so much. Really appreciate all of your insight. I am going to bring on our next professional here, Kurt Estes, to talk a little bit more about the M&A world, of course. So just a quick intro, Kurt. Kurt has over 20 years of transaction experience that includes advising on sales and acquisitions, as well as investing in or creating businesses around innovative technologies. He's conducted or managed dozens of transactions covering all stages of a company's life, from helping to acquire seed investments through facilitation of liquidity events. Thanks for being here, Kurt. Our conversations today have really been around trends and strategies for professional services, and you live and breathe in the M&A world, right? So
Exactly.
First of all, thanks for joining us to share your valuable insight today. Your first question I have for you, what are you seeing among the M&A activity in professional services today? Just let's start with the basics, right?
It's frankly been quite hot for the last couple of years. There's been an awful lot of activity, a lot of mergers in every facet of professional services. Valuations have been higher than they have been in the past. There's a lot of people out there with money that are looking for good companies to acquire. And quite frankly, there's an enormous need for talent. And I think you see every day headlines about companies not being able to hire enough people to meet the demand of their customers. And this has been going on for a while. Like, it's been exacerbated here in recent months, but it looks like it's going to continue. And frankly, I think that's going to continue to drive mergers and acquisitions, barring any unforeseen changes to the economy for whatever reason.
Sure. When a firm has to go through due diligence, what impact does having a solution like Salesforce have on the process? We kind of talked about this with Brian a little bit, but it'd be great to get your insight.
Well, you know what? The shorter answer is it helps a lot. The more complicated answer is that any tool is only as good as how you use it. If you keep a lot of very good records and you have a lot of very nice data, it's going to help with the diligence process. Same thing goes with your ERP system and any other systems you may have. If they're well used, well organized, and have the data that the buyers are looking for, it will help the diligence process go smoother. There's a couple of things. Access to data and immediate access to data and data requests by the buyer is very important. So if you have this in your CRM or in your ERP systems, and it's readily available, it will make things go smoother. Quite frankly, gives you a higher chance to actually close the transaction. It might actually even get you a little bit better valuation. And when I say that, I don't mean they're going to increase the price that they've agreed to, but quite frankly, if diligence is taking a long time or they can't get access to information, a buyer can't get access to information they want, they have been known to reduce what they're offering because it increases the risk. One other thing I would say, I always talk to my clients about institutionalization of their business. And what I mean by that is who owns the secret sauce does one or two individuals in the company, do they have all the relationships, have all the connections and so forth? Do they know how to make the widget or what have you? Is it, is it kind of concentrated there, or is it company knowledge? And I would argue that the more you use CRM and in your ERP systems, the more that data and their relationship, maybe not the relationships, but the information about the customers and interactions and so forth become more owned by the company. And so if you're a buyer, what you want is something that's going to be durable, such that if I buy this company and that key person leaves, I still have what makes the company run, the data and hopefully some of the relationships and so forth. So to that extent, if you're using your CRM wisely and extensively, and it's, like I said, it's well organized, it has all the relevant information in it, your company's going to be more valuable than if somebody's got some scratch notes or put some notes in Word or in Excel and they keep it on their laptop. And, if that person wins the lottery, as we like to say, instead of being hit by the bus, or they decide to leave or whatever, creates a significant risk for a buyer. So I would say without a doubt, it's good to have, but I will also say it's only as good as how you use it.
What tips would you give a company that is planning to prioritize M&A in their 2022 strategy?
Well, you know what? I have that can be a very, very long list, and it can be highly specific to the individual business based on their current situation. I have in the past spent years talking to companies prior to them actually going out to sell, helping them to understand what buyers value most in their industry and so forth. But there are some general things. One, get your team together. You have to have a good transaction attorney. If you're going to use an investment bank, you need to get somebody reputable to represent you. Get to have them get to know your company and so forth. It's good to have wealth advisors and tax advisors on your staff to help you prepare. With respect to the company, again, it comes down to institutionalization of your business. When a buyer comes in, they're buying a set of assets that results in some sort of cash flow. And to the extent that is a good package of assets, you can identify, you can understand, and it is of low risk of disappearing for some reason after the transaction, you're going to be much better off. So is the data available and not at risk? Have you diversified the relationships with your customers such that you don't have one or two people who own all the key customers, and you actually have a lot of people within your organization touching the customer? So if one or two people leave, you don't lose this large revenue stream. Have you looked at your contracts with your customers, your MSAs or whatever you're doing your work with? Are they transferable? So if you sell, are you going to have to go through an awful lot of legal gymnastics to allow the buyer to have those customers and clients transfer to him? And it's not necessarily an inconsequential thing, because if there are if it's a notice, so you have to notify your client that there's been a change of control or somebody else is taking over. That's not so bad. If it's one of these things where you have to get permission, well then, what happens? You've got 300 customers like that. Well, now before you can close your transaction, you have to get a consent to assign from every one of those, or some subset of those that the buyer agrees to, that you work on the rest over a certain amount of time. So, it's important to kind of look at that. Frankly, it's probably a good idea to look at that years ahead of transacting, so that you can put some specific language in your MSAs and other client contracts that address that before you decide it's time to transact. So that's not a bad thing to do. If you're thinking of exiting next year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, it does not hurt to reach out to representation, whether it's your attorney, or, like I said, maybe you're going to hire an investment bank to help you through the process, and have them look at your situation and provide some insights into how to best prepare, because not every company is going to be the same. and have the same issues and so forth. But you can't start too early preparing.
Sure. And Kurt, the last question I have for you here, and I realize it's quite broad and probably needs a lot of detail to it, but the Cliff Notes version, are there any M&A pitfalls to avoid?
Yes, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I will say the biggest one I have with my clients, and the ones that we are oftentimes very insistent upon them making sure is correct before we go to market, is make sure you have the right attorney. And when I say by that, you might have the best attorney ever helping with your contracts and helping you do your incorporation and different things like that. But you don't go to your nose and throat doctor to do open heart surgery. And what I mean by that is, when it's time to go into a transaction and you're looking for legal representation, go out and identify an attorney that doesn't do anything but M&A transactions. Somebody who's done dozens, hundreds of transactions. They might cost a little bit more per hour. They might not, but they might. But you'll save money in the long run because they'll spend fewer hours because they know what's important. They know what to look for, and you'll be better protected. Not to go into great detail, but I have had clients in the past that have insisted on using their own, an attorney that was not a transaction attorney, and they've run into issues. It can kill the deal, such that you don't actually get the deal closed. Or you can get the deal closed and they can miss something significant that could cause you major issues later on. And in fact, I had one client that ended up suing his attorney a couple years out because they mishandled something in the documentations. They ended up costing them some money on the earnout. So that would probably be the number one thing. The other thing is it never hurts to have representation from an investment bank. Building your team is important. Getting in front of this and talking to your wealth advisor about different strategies of how to protect your shield your assets and so forth before you go and do the transaction to optimize your tax situation. It's not a bad thing. Tax attorneys are also very good. So I would say the number one thing to do is probably build your team. Don't knee jerk it. Don't decide you're going to sell it today. Call up somebody and try to sell it in the next 3 or 4 months. It makes a lot more sense to get a little bit more planning.
Excellent. Well, Kurt, thank you very much. We do have a few questions for this session. I'd like to bring Brian back out if he's still available for us. Brian, the question for you is, hold on one second, let me go grab it. For an organization that is considering a large merger, now that we've talked to Kurt a little bit more about you getting into the details of M&A, this seems to be a hot topic. What lesson learned or top tip would you offer if you have one?
Spend a lot of time in due diligence.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we brought forward but didn't execute immediately was bringing in a third party. So we contracted Sikich to come in and do electronic due diligence on both sides of the relationship. We needed to do that probably 2 months before we did. But especially if you're talking about combining instances of platforms, that's something that I would absolutely recommend you do as early as you can.
Okay.
By a third party.
Sure. And for Kurt, how often have you seen the lack of immediate access to information impact on an M&A opportunity?
I will say it has more to do with how long it takes to get done. So if you don't have well-organized data that you can pull reports on and so forth, it takes a lot more time and a lot more effort. It's more disruptive to your business because somebody has to spend time pulling that, organizing it, and answering the question that has been posed in diligence. I personally don't think I've seen one where it actually killed the deal by itself. It's extended it. Now, 2 things kill the deal quicker than anything else. 3 things. I'll give you 3 things. One is if the performance of your company takes a nosedive after you've agreed to a price during diligence for whatever reason. A lot of times it's because you're so distracted and you forget to run your business. That's a bad thing. You need to continue to run your business, hopefully delivering strong results and so forth all the way through diligence so that the buyer doesn't go, oh my God, I'm going to reduce the price, or I'm not interested anymore. So that can kill the deal. The second thing we already talked about, your attorney. Probably quicker than anything else, your attorney will kill your deal if he doesn't know what he's doing. You get somebody who's not a transaction attorney, they're going to focus on stuff that doesn't matter. They're going to argue about things till they're blue in the face on stuff that really doesn't matter, and maybe miss some stuff that does. But in the end, it could cause a lot of frustrations. It could get you all worked up as the seller, and the whole deal can fall apart. And then the third thing is time. And this kind of goes back to the question. If diligence takes too long, people get tired. And at some point, if they can't get the answers they need, or just, something might happen, maybe you'll have a snafu in the business that's not your fault, but or whatever, or people just get tired and quit. So too much time in diligence, too much time to get it done after you've kind of agreed to a price will kill the deal. So to that end, having well-organized data that's available makes an awful lot of sense and can help get the deal done.
Yeah. Brian, last questions for you. What would you say is a key takeaway you have learned from your transition to solution innovator?
Well, it's not as easy as it looks. No, it's amazing how challenging it is to help people transform. My key takeaway, frankly, is in the methodology. So what's helped us transform as a business more than any other single item is the motion to this command of the message, command of the sale programmatics that are brought to us by force management. It's not a sales methodology, it is an operating methodology that includes sales. And having that common language, common direction, and bar none, absolute support from the executives, from Jim all the way through all the management levels, that really has made that transformation better than, this is my fifth one in my career. It's the best one that I've been through to date. We are 2.5 months rough and tough from a combined instance. We made that acquisition in May. So we're already a converged organization, and we'll have systems converged before the middle of next year, which is incredibly fast.
Great. Well, Kurt, Brian, that is all I have for you today. Thank you for being on our professional panel here. We really, really appreciate it. I'd like to thank Claire, James, Matt, Ariel, Cameron, Brian, Kurt, for being here today and speaking to us, giving us all this insight for Success Everywhere, digital workplace strategies for professional services. So thanks again for joining, and we'll see everybody next time.